Hey everyone, and welcome. Every single day we enter into legal agreements without even thinking about it. No paper, no signatures, nothing. The second you hand your keys to a valet or help a friend out with a loan, bam, you've just made a contract. So today, let's dive in and uncover the hidden rules that are actually running the show behind these simple, everyday actions.
Really think about that for a second. When you do something like that, what's actually happening on a legal level? What are your rights? And maybe more importantly, what are your risks? These aren't just casual favors, They are legally recognized contracts, and they have real consequences. And we're about to break down exactly what they are.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off with those everyday legal handshakes. Then we'll really dig into the idea of a deposit, which is all about safekeeping. We'll also look at when something looks like a deposit but actually isn't. After that, we're going to pivot to a totally different kind of promise, the guarantee. And from there, this is a big one, we will nail down the critical difference between a guarantor and a surety. Then we'll wrap it all up with the key things you need to know to protect yourself.
Right. So many of our daily interactions are guided by these invisible rules. See, the law doesn't always need a formal, notarized document to kick in. The simple act of handing something over to someone for a very specific reason, well, that can create a totally binding contract. We're about to look at two of the most common ones you'll ever run into.
Okay, let's start with our first major concept, the contract of deposit. And to really get it, there's no better way than to walk through a real-world story. So let's check out this pretty fascinating case involving a hotel guest, a valet, and a car that just vanished.
The scene is super simple, something that happens thousands of times a day. A guest pulls up to the City Garden Hotel, he hands his keys over to the valet, and he heads inside. The valet then parks the car in the hotel's nearby lot. But later, when the guest is ready to leave, the car is gone. Stolen.
Now, here's where it gets interesting. The hotel, of course, points to all these signs they have posted everywhere. You've seen them. Management is not responsible for lost or stolen items. So does that work? Does that get them off the hook, legally speaking? Is the guest just out of a car? What do you think the court said? Well, the court looked at this very specific type of agreement called a necessary deposit. The law basically creates this contract automatically just to protect travelers. The moment that guest handed his keys, which, represent his car, to the valet, a contract was formed. And its main point, its principal purpose, was one thing, safekeeping. And the verdict? A huge, resounding yes. The hotel is absolutely liable. The court said that this was a necessary deposit, and because of that, any sign or notice the hotel puts up trying to get out of that responsibility is completely legally void. It has zero legal effect. So the takeaway here is massive. Hotels have a legal duty to protect the property of their guests, period. Now this table is super helpful because it really clarifies what makes a deposit special. Its only purpose is safekeeping. See, if I let you borrow my car for a weekend, that's what the law calls a commodo datum, a loan for use. If I lend you a cup of sugar, you're not expected to return those exact same sugar crystals, right? You'll just return the same amount of a similar kind of sugar. That's a mutuum. But with a deposit, the entire point of the deal is that you get the exact same thing back, safe and sound. But wait, it's not always that simple. Things can get a little more complicated. Not every time you leave something with someone does it count as a legal deposit. To figure it out, the law uses something called the principal purpose test. So let's jump into our next case to see how this works. Okay, so here's the story. A father leaves his tractor with his son, just tells him, hey, keep an eye on this for me, keep it safe. But the son, well, he owes his landlord some back rent. So he gets this idea to use the tractor as collateral. He pledges it to the landlord as security for his debt. So naturally, when the father comes back to get his tractor, the landlord says, nope, not giving it back. So the court had to ask one simple question. What was the principal purpose of the deal between the son and the landlord? It clearly wasn't safekeeping. The landlord even admitted he was holding the tractor as security. Therefore, it just wasn't a deposit. And this case just perfectly illustrates that rule. If the main reason isn't to keep it safe, it's not a deposit. And by the way, the pledge itself was also void since the son didn't even own the tractor to begin with. So yes, the father got his tractor back. Okay, let's totally switch gears now and talk about our second big concept, guarantee. This is basically the fancy legal term for when you tell a lender, don't worry, if my friend doesn't pay you back, I will. It is that classic I've got your back promise. But it's a promise with some very serious legal weight behind it. So, officially, a guarantee is a contract where one person, the guarantor, promises a creditor that they will cover a debtor's obligation.
But, and this is key, only if the debtor themselves fails to pay up. You'll notice it's what's called an accessory contract. It literally can't exist without a main debt that it's attached to.
All right, I need you to lean in and pay close attention here, because this next part is, I would argue, one of the most important financial distinctions many of us will ever come across in a contract. The difference between being a guarantor and being a surety. It could mean the difference between being a simple backup plan and being on the hook for an entire debt immediately.
So here's the breakdown. A guarantor has secondary liability. That means the creditor has to go after the main debtor first, and only if that person truly cannot pay can they come after you. You're the backup plan. A surety, on the other hand, has primary liability. The moment the debtor simply does not pay on time, the creditor can come straight to you. You are, for all intents and purposes, a co-debtor. And the key legal difference all comes down to a right called the benefit of excusation.
So what on earth is this benefit of excusation? Well, think of it as a powerful legal shield just for the guarantor. It forces the creditor to exhaust all of the main debtor's property first. I mean, they have to sue them, seize their assets, sell them off, the whole shebang. Only after all that is done and they still haven't been paid can they even think about asking the guarantor for a dime. It's a huge protection.
And this leads us to the million-dollar question. What happens if, buried deep in the fine print of that guarantee agreement you're about to sign, there's a little clause that says you expressly waive the benefit of excusation? Well, as one company found out the hard way, it changes absolutely everything.
This quote from a major Supreme Court case says it all. You can call the contract a guarantee agreement, you can call the person a guarantor, but the law doesn't care about the labels you use. It cares about what the contract actually does. If you bind yourself solidarily with the debtor, or if you waive exclusion, then legally you are a surety. End of story. And that is precisely what happened to a company called Tidcorp. They signed what they thought was a simple guarantee, but because they waived that right of exclusion, the court said, nope, you're a surety. So when the main debtor went into bankruptcy and all the claims against them were put on hold, it didn't matter. The bank went straight to Tidcorp and demanded payment in full right then and there, and the court completely agreed.
Phew! So, after digging through all these cases and legal terms, what are the big takeaways? What do you absolutely, positively need to remember to keep yourself safe? Let's wrap it all up.
Okay, let's recap the 5 most important points. First, remember, hotels are responsible for your stuff. Those signs they put up, they don't hold water in court. Second, always ask yourself, what's the real purpose of this arrangement? That principal purpose is everything. Third, burn this into your memory. Guarantor equals backup plan. Surety equals co-debtor. Fourth, and this is the big one, read every single word, because waiving exclusion is the magic phrase that completely changes your liability. And finally, just remember that that right of exclusion is a shield for the guarantor, not for the debtor. So, the next time you drop off your coat at a restaurant, park your car, or think about helping a friend get a loan, you'll know there is so much more going on just beneath the surface. And so my final question to you is this. After learning how these rules really work, what simple agreement in your own life are you now going to look at with a totally new perspective? Thanks for tuning in.